I think the thing is, you have to leave people free to make choices about that. And I can remember discussing this with Freire. He said some of the people in Brazil had tried to push people to take risks, push communities they were to take risks that they weren't ready to take. And he said that is absolutely unacceptable. You give them the opportunity, you let them think through what will be the consequences if they say no. You absolutely have to respect that. And I think that's extremely important. And I think that's been something we've tried to follow always, that you are not an agitator, you're an animator, and you help people to think it through for themselves, not pushing them to what you think should be done.
And that's one of the dangers of having written the books and getting them published. That was an ethical question for us, is because when we were in Kenya, which comes a bit later, like that same year, but in September 11th, actually, the day Pinochet was, not Pinochet.
No, the day Allende was
killed. Anyway, but we landed in Kenya, but we then, after 5 years of doing this methodology in Kenya, it was by stencils, like Torah and all that kind of stuff, but we gave no one the handbooks because it had to go with the training.
Yes, we said that.
They had to be in the training. But then they said, you really should have these printed. And so then then later in Zimbabwe we did. And it was a real question because we knew then at that moment it was out of our hands.
And people it can be used in a very manipulative way. And we're aware of that you have to really kind of...
It's a problem with any handbook, isn't
Any
it?
handbook.
It's not a recipe book.
No, it's not a recipe book.
Yeah.
But it's also partly because you are dealing with people's feelings and you're working with emotions a tremendous lot in this whole Paulo Freire thing. I think it's more dangerous than some other simple handbooks for practical skills.
Yeah, like bricklaying or something like that. Because it's not only the feelings, it's also you're opening up questions around structural change and issues that could lead people into taking actions that they may not be prepared for all the consequences. So you have to be thinking about the consequences and posing those, or what are some of the consequences if we do this, if you do this, so that they think it through for themselves. But again, the books can be used
but
in any
also
way.
At the same time, you're an animator and not merely a facilitator. You are challenging to think about things and to face issues of injustice and what they want to do about injustice. So you are raising issues of injustice all the time.
So
you're allowing them to surface, I would say, more than raise. You don't actually raise them yourself, but as you do the survey, you listen for what are the things that people are really, really frustrated in.
But helping them to analyze it. So you move from description to analysis, and everyone can describe. Anyone can describe.
So
and that's easy enough to do, but how do you help people to analyze? But why, but why, but why, but why? And I mean, I always think of David Warner. I always think of David Warner's thing.
The but why method.
But the but why method is that the child or the teenager has a cut foot, and he says, "Why do you have that cut foot?" And he said, "I don't have any shoes." Why don't you have any shoes? Because we can't afford it. Why can't you afford it? Is because your father doesn't. My father doesn't have a job. Why doesn't your father have a job? Because they've just thrown all the workers out. Why did they throw the workers out? Because they put machines in. Who's the one in the? But why did they put the machines in? And that's
the effort to get to root causes of problems is actually. I mean, it is obviously the heart of really popular education in that sense, and so that but why thing is just really important. There was something else I wanted to say about that.
I cut you.
Yes.
We were talking about the ethics.
The ethics, yes.
Before I went into.
Before you
the ethics of handbooks.
Ethics of the handbooks, yes.
Anyway.
That it's not neutral. I mean, actually, Paulo Freire is one of the key principles is education is not neutral. Either you are reinforcing the status quo or you are challenging towards transformation. And so, those are part of the key principles of Freire's education.
We've reached the stage when the political climate is hotting up. Biko's been arrested.
It had been years. One of the things that we did a tremendous lot was use things like generations of resistance. I don't know if you've known that
film.
It's a film. It was a very good film that we used a lot. And it was really showing that actually resistance wasn't new. It had started with the Bambatha Rebellion and had gone on all through the whole history of South Africa. And that there'd been a wave every, from the 40s onwards, from the time the Nats got into power. There was a wave in the 50s when, of course, the Freedom Charter came out. There was another wave in the 60s when the whole defense group came, what was that group called? The one John Conradi was involved in.
Yeah.
And then there was this next wave in the 70s. But this was one wave of the resistance hotting up towards white domination.